Popular barbecue restaurant with deep roots in Ocala is staying in the city after getting new ownership. TV 20's Kristen Chase tells us why this purchase means so much to the new owners.
Remodeling began last week at Fat Boys BBQ, which is a spot loved by Ocala residents for more than 50 years.
You know, it feels like home when you come to a place that you've been going to since you're a kid and your grandparents went to, and you've got stories of going to it, and you know, it's a little different than the chain restaurants.
It is that reason that 3 Ocala entrepreneurs jumped on the purchase of Fat Boys BBQ when it was put up for sale around 2 months ago.
Well, I'm third generation Ocalian, born and raised, and this restaurant, growing up here in the southeast part of Ocala, was always a family favorite, all the way back to when, my grandparents moved here.
The barbecue restaurant has been a popular spot for families in Ocala since 1970, leaving it with over 50 years of memories and, of course, traditional pit smoke barbecue. Owners plan to bring it back to the Adobe Southwestern look that it had in the 70s.
So I hope we can just bring, back a little bit of history. In the last several years, they have had a rough go here. But, that's why we're here. We're completely revamping the place. It's going to be a completely new experience. It's going to be fresh. It's going to be fun.
When the trio announced the purchase of the restaurant a couple weeks ago, feedback was instant.
It's been pretty cool because after we bought this, we've had a lot of people show up. We've had some viral posts going crazy, and I've just seen the excitement from the community. Wherever I go, I've got my hat on and people are stopping me to talk about it.
Doors are expected to open in April, and hiring will begin shortly to hopefully bring Fat Boys BBQ another 53 years of service to Ocala residents. Kristen Chase, TV 20 News.